and welcome to Still Sassy. Now, it doesn't matter how old or young you are, if you want something badly enough, you have it in you to make it happen. At this point, you might not agree, but honestly, everything is possible with the right mindset and a plan. Now I'm going to share a story with you that starts right back in my childhood. So I'm 5 years old and on holiday in Hornsey, East Yorkshire. It seemed very exotic to me back then, but trust me, it's not. As was the way back then, there were a number of ponies lined up on the beach, giving rides to children. A simple walk up and down on the sand, which only lasted a couple of minutes. I'd never been near a horse before, let alone ridden one, but I was smitten by these beautiful animals that were so big yet extremely gentle. So for 5 days, I pestered my mum and dad to let me have a go. On the last day of our holiday, they finally gave in and lifted me onto the back of Gypsy, a grey, gentle giant. They must have had some of the allocated holiday spending available, I suppose. I didn't ask, I just wanted to get on the horse. I won't bore you with the details of the ride, but from that day, I was hooked. My parents didn't have much spare money, but once home, they somehow scraped enough together to let me have a riding lesson every week at a definitely below par local riding school. And although I enjoyed every minute, after years of this, I wanted more. A pony of my own. One that I could take care of, love and tell my secrets to. Out of the question, said Mum and Dad, and I was expecting this, of course. I then did something that worked, and it still does now, although back then I didn't know how powerful it would be at the time, and it wasn't a conscious strategy by any means. I made a plan, which my parents knew absolutely nothing about. Their no hadn't put me off, nor did the lack of money, or the fact that none of us knew anything much about keeping a horse. I simply knew I wanted one, more than anything back then. Typical girl, I guess. The sticking point as I saw it was the money thing, so I started saving. Every single penny of my pocket money went into a jar. It wasn't much, but I spent nothing. I said no to my friends when they suggested we buy sweets. I said no to birthday parties knowing I'd have to buy a present. I just kept my mind on my horse, the beauty I knew I would own one day. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, I counted my cash, and I had £75. Yep, £75, that's all. I was so excited. Surely this would be enough. Honestly, I knew nothing back then. The next step was to find the weekly costs of keeping my horse, which even at that age I knew could be pricey. Much head scratching later, and I had a plan for that too. My unsuspecting brother was about to be tapped up. 12 years older than me and a soldier, my plan was to ask him to pay. I felt sure he wouldn't say no to his little sister, and I was right. He agreed to send me something every month. It was only at this point that I unleashed my plan on my parents. I had a lump sum and the bills covered, or so I thought. Surely they would say yes now. Now fast forward to me as an 11-year-old. I'm standing in the middle of a coal field owned by a probably dodgy horse dealer, and I was clutching my £75 tightly in my hands. Yep, my parents had been so impressed with my tenacity that they said yes. They did probably regret it later when we needed a trailer to take my horse to shows and more kit for the same reason. Although for a number of years I would lead my pony to shows, with Mum and Dad going on ahead with the tack and equipment I would need. I absolutely walked miles. I have £75, I told the dealer, and I'm sure I saw him roll his eyes. He slowly looked around the field, full of horses and ponies, his eyes eventually stopping on a brown and white one, and told me out of the whole field that was the only one I could afford. I wasn't put off by that. Okay, I said. I didn't even go near the horse. I just paid up, and my parents organised for him, as it turned out to be delivered. And by the way, this is not the correct way to buy a horse if you're thinking of it. Definitely don't do this. Only once said pony arrived did we find out that it was just 1 year old, and because of that it would be another 2.5 years before I could ride him. But I didn't care. I could wait, and I set about learning all I could about training a horse to take a rider and be obedient. And I wasn't very good at that part, as it turned out. At first, we had to keep him in our very small garden. My dad built a stable of sorts, which took up all the space. For the pony to graze, we had to lead him onto a piece of council-owned land, behind the house, which was also council owned. I found out later that my parents avoided, on purpose I'm sure, telling the council about the stable and the pony in the garden. I would spend hours on that field while he merrily munched away. We eventually swapped this arrangement for an allotment, which was barely any better, but we did finally find a stable yard my brother's money could afford, with a big field which my horse was very grateful for. I had that horse, Paint he was called, for 10 years. I trained him myself, turned him into a champion show pony, and had a fab time doing it. I sold him when I started nurse training due to lack of time, which was heartbreaking. He went on to a family who kept him until the end, and I got to ride him again much later when his kind owners invited me to see him. I've had a few horses since those first days, all needing the same amount of planning, but thankfully not the permission of my parents. Looking back, I realised it wasn't just about that horse. It was about something much bigger. It was about learning that if you want something badly enough, no matter how impossible it might seem, you can find a way to make it happen. Now, I want to ask you, what's the dream you've been carrying with you? Maybe it's something you've pushed aside because life got in the way. Maybe you've told yourself it's too late, but let me tell you this, it's not too late. It's never too late to dream, to start again, or to do something just for you. Whether it's starting a business, learning a new skill, travelling, writing a book, or simply putting yourself first for once, it all starts with a plan. Take one step today when you finish listening to this, even if that step is quite small. Write down your dream, say it out loud, or share it with someone you trust. Just start. The little girl I was, standing in that field with £75 in my hand, had no idea how it would all turn out. But she had belief and hung on to it for dear life. And that belief is still in you too. Your younger self had dreams, and she's there waiting for you to take the reins again. Excuse the pun. So what's your next step? Remember, it's not about age or circumstances, it's about mindset, belief, and the willingness to take that first step toward making your dream a reality. Because anything is possible at any age. Okay, so if you've watched this and are feeling that you do want to grab your dreams, but there's some niggling thoughts in your head, maybe a voice in your head, the inner you, that's saying you're not good enough, you can't do this, all the stuff that we tell ourselves all the time. Well, I've got a video that will help you with that, and I'm going to link it here now. Thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.